Welcome to the Thriving Misfits, the podcast where we celebrate resilience, embrace diversity, and challenge norms. I'm your host, Fiona Young, and in this episode of the Thriving Misfits, we explore leadership through the lens of identity, culture, and what it truly means to belong. My guest today is Vanessa Iloste, a highly accomplished, results-driven HR executive with over 20 years of experience building and transforming HR functions across Asia, particularly in complex multinational retail and luxury environments. Today, as the founder of the HR Lab, she works with global organizations to accelerate growth and resilience through data-driven organizational design and transformation strategies. But beyond that, she also has an impressive career, but she's also a great storyteller. She left her home country when she was 19 years old and spent the last 30 years across Asia, and at times felt like a misfit in her own culture, only to find alignment somewhere else. Along the way, she has built a leadership style shaped for not just by strategy and performance, but by relationships, adaptability, and a deep respect for cultural nuances. So welcome, Vanessa.
I'm so happy to be with you today, Fiona. Thank you for inviting me today.
Absolutely. And Vanessa is also a professional podcaster. Before we dive into our conversation, Vanessa, maybe you can share a little bit more about your podcast. How many episodes, how many seasons? What actually is the vision of your podcast?
Thank you so much, Fiona. Well, this is a work of love that I started 3 years ago with my best friend Vanessa Iloste, and it's called the Career Transition Podcast. And this is about the same way you're working on this incredible topic around identity and resilience. We are working on something that is very close to you. There is a lot of adjacency. It's about reinventing yourself and doing career transitions. So yes, we have done so far 6 season, more than 65 episodes, and we are still having fun doing it every time, the same way you are having fun doing it every time. So this is really, really something that is not like work; it's more like having fun and learning from each other. So thank you so much for allowing me to talk about it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, career transition, I can definitely resonate with that. Even though I only joined one corporate company, but it was always a transition, not only, in terms of functions, but also in terms of geography. So transitioning out of corporate into entrepreneurship, that's something that both of us now also have in common. So lots of commonalities. But in order for the listeners to get to know you a little bit better, Vanessa, you have been living in Asia for the past 30 years. You've been in Asia longer than me. I've only been here for 15 years. What's one cultural habit you have picked up here in Asia that you really cannot unlearn anymore?
So I've reflected on that, and I think that it might sound a little bit strange, but every time I start a new relationship, I actually build it as if this relationship is going to stay with me until I die. So it's something that I pay a lot of attention. I try to really carefully, start the relationship in the right way, and I try to nurture that relationship. I feel like this is something I've learned in a beautiful way in Asia, is to protect this incredible network we have around us, and this goodwill. I think there is a lot about having goodwill around you, people who support you, people who want the best for you, people who guide you. Yeah. And I feel like the more you nurture them, and the better you live your life. So this is something that I do I would say I take it very seriously, and I apply myself to the best I can. I'm not perfect, and I'm sure I make mistakes, but this is something very dear to my heart.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not just networking, but actually creating meaningful connections, hopefully for life, but at least for this phase of our life that we're together and learning from each other as well. So fantastic. I'm really grateful that you've actually agreed to join us on the podcast because you have amazing stories to tell. I've been following Vanessa for the past years, in terms of her leadership. And then, of course, now in terms of entrepreneurship, I think there's also so much that we can exchange. You've been living in Asia for 30 years. You look Caucasian. Tell us a little bit more about also the desire or the goal back then, moving from France to Asia. What brought you here?
Yeah, so I mean, very recently, it was very funny. My mom uncovered from the attic an essay that I wrote when I was 12 years old about the job that I wanted to do, the dream job. This kind of essay you do. And in that essay, it's very clear that I want to have an international career. So I mention it very. I mean, it's very obvious, and it's very there is a lot of determination in the way I position it, but nobody knows what kind of job I'm going to do. It's very fuzzy when it comes to, oh, what is she going to do when she's having an international career. So this was when I was 12, and it stays with me. I felt that the word was much bigger out there. It was something that I knew from my parents who had traveled a lot. I mean, with little means, not a lot of means, but always like putting all the savings on the travel, all the savings on the trips, and I felt like it was very important to discover the rest of the planet. When I was 17 or 18, it was physically painful. I remember it very clearly, and it was very hard to explain that to myself. Why do I feel this pain? I mean, I was not unhappy. Like, I had a fantastic family. I had fantastic friends. I had a great little school. There was nothing wrong with my environment. I was a very lucky person. But I felt this driving force to basically take myself out of my country and to move out. And when I got this scholarship to study in Japan, this was my dream come true. So I left, and this was the rest is history, as we say. And I was very, very lucky to be able to make this dream come true.
Right. It reminds me of my childhood as well. So I also journaled a lot when I was a child. So I grew up in Germany in the 80s. There were not many Asians, actually no other Asians in school. So at that time, lots of bullying, lots of racial slurs. And I felt definitely like a sore thumb. And what I did then is to hide in my room and journal. And when I look back at my journals, I still have them. It actually says that I want to return to Asia. And it's very specifically to Hong Kong, because at that time, my parents were watching those TVB dramas and, the Hong Kong movie stars like Chow Yun-fat and so forth. And I always had this desire to move to Hong Kong. And I always felt that life over there would be much better than in Germany. It was always so dark and raining. So mind you, I lived in Hamburg, which is in the north of Germany. It's always raining. It's always dark. And yeah, I feel that was also the power of manifestation when you write something down. And then, I never really pursued then going to Asia until actually 7 years into my career in Shell. Then all of a sudden, because my role was made redundant, I told my line manager, hey, I think now it's the time for me to actually move on to Asia. They actually secured me another role. But then I thought, if I don't take this chance to resign and, explore what's truly important to me, then maybe I will never do that, right? I would start that new job in Germany. So, but by also with this whole redundancy topic, it actually opened up that conversation with my line manager, and he said that, hey, let me just help you to see whether there's an opportunity in Hong Kong or not. And then 2010, which is almost 30 years later, I've made it to Asia. So I know that Vanessa, you also have this love of writing, and what is it that draws you to writing poems, short stories?
Yeah, so I started very, this is interesting. I started also very young. I started when I was, I think it was 7 or 8. So we must have been journaling at the same time. You were in Hamburg and I was in the suburb of Paris. This is quite cute and funny. I think that there is this need for me. My writing is usually a short format. So I write, poems that are usually 1, 2 pages. I have written short stories, but the one format I prefer is really the 1 page, 2 page maximum. And I write it into bursts of creativity. So it takes me 20 minutes. A lot of people are very, surprised, but it takes me 20, 30 minutes and then it's done. And then I just do spend time on editing, finding the right wordings. Or maybe in total, it's 2 hours work, but it's at the beginning, it's very short. I think that it's very important for me to capture the moment of happiness and these moments of like the gift we receive from life, and these moments that are sometimes it's only a gesture. It can be a smile. It can be the someone looking at you feeling happy or feeling relieved or feeling like understood or heard. Or
Mm.
and these moments, they are, they belong to the most beautiful gift we receive in our lives. And unfortunately, we don't have them in a bottle the same way we have the pictures. I mean, sometimes I feel the pictures is really capturing this type of moment. Sometimes you look at pictures, family pictures, from birthdays or family gatherings, and or family holidays, and then you recover the feeling of happiness you had in that particular moment. But I found that capturing it in words is even more powerful for me.
Yeah.
It gives me, the true nuance of that moment of happiness, or sometimes moment of difficulty, because I'm also writing about, sometimes some
Mm.
moment of sadness, or some grieving. I've lost my dad, so I wrote about that as well. um, but it's powerful because when I revisit these poems, when I revisit this text, it brings me back to these moments, and I most of the time, majority of the time, I feel extremely grateful. I feel like really grateful for all these beautiful moments that were given to me, and it brings me back, to uh, enjoying, every single moment. And I remind myself, like, wow, you have been given all of this. You cannot feel like deflated. You cannot feel like negative. If you have this in your memories, if you have all this happiness in these bottles, you need to be able to wake up in the morning with a smile on your face, and just to go through the day, because you have all that love behind you that is going to carry you throughout any difficulty or any challenge that you're facing. So this is the basis of my writing.
Yeah.
I found it very hard to explain because people expect me to write a book. My mom would have loved me to write a full book. And she told me, she said, I want a beginning, a middle, and the end. This is not a book. And I said to her, I wish I could do that, but this is not what I'm about. And I feel it doesn't matter. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, I'm not doing it for publishing. I'm doing it
Yes.
for, the pleasure of writing, and
Yeah.
the pleasure of sharing some of the poems with the people that enjoy them.
I mean, it's wonderful. I definitely resonate with what you just said, that you write actually for yourself, maybe even to leave a legacy behind and not to publish it. And, this is the same thing that happened to me as well. Now, I did write a short story, but I've also written a book. But I would say that it was, the motivation was more about leaving a legacy behind. I never actually expected it to be published. And I and it happened during COVID, so we had a lot of time. We couldn't go out, obviously. So similar to you, I just timed my clock for 20 minutes, and I just wrote for 20 minutes. And actually, the writing part was fairly easy. The editing part, that's where it gets complicated and complex, and of course, marketing it as well. I don't see myself as, a full-time author earning money with that, but it was something that I wanted to do, like a passion project, leaving a legacy behind, talking about my experiences and adversities also as a third culture kid, and then of course my future children. At that time I didn't have a child yet, would also be third culture children, so leaving something behind for them as well. But maybe you could actually compile all your short stories and poems into, a like an anthology, or right, and it's a book already.
Yeah. So what I did 2 weeks ago is I did it for my family because the 10-year anniversary of the passing of my dad is coming in July, and I realized that in my computer I had 100. I think it's 175 poems that were talking about him. So I decided I'm going to choose the ones that are really the most, the most powerful ones, the most impactful ones, so that we can remember him together. So
Yeah.
yeah, I actually did that, but it's more like to share with the very close friends, with the very close people uh, around him, and it was a very good experience. It was really a very because these poems are really fun. There is a lot of humor in this. And when I when I put it together, I really had a feeling of accomplishment, because it was a full, little book of 60 pages. It doesn't matter. It's just for the family, but it
Yeah.
was it was it was like physically ready, and it makes a huge difference when you see it as a one piece, instead of all these puzzle pieces that are all over the places.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what a way to reminisce together as a family. Now, let's move back to your professional area, or that part of your identity. So you've been working primarily only in Asia over the past 30 years. So you worked across Japan, China, Singapore. How has moving across Asia actually defined your leadership style?
So the first thing I would say is the the true the true realization that when you think that you actually don't know anything. So this is I would say this is the first awareness, or the first assumption that makes my leadership. And people would say, "Oh, this is not very assertive, Vanessa. This is not very powerful. You have spent 30 years going all around these places, and you don't know anything." But for me, it's powerful, because it's the beginning. It's the beginning of of the leadership act. I think is an act of humility, is an act of, like, understanding that the team is already owning a lot of the answers.
Yeah.
That as a leader, you are the person who might be facilitating the co-creation. You might be, but you need to basically you need to leverage all this knowledge. You need to leverage all this wisdom, and your role is also the role of the custodian of this. So it's I mean, the act is an act of humility, but it's also an act of care, and an act of respect. There is this in my leadership practice. I want to respect the people around me. I want them to have a voice as much as possible, and I want them to be reflected in what we co-create together. So this is what I started with, and then I really find it so much fun to have brainstorming sessions together. I really like, I'm a very creative person, so I like to embark my teams into, like, journey of discovery, into the world of possibilities around a topic. And I love the idea of, like, exploring until you feel you can, like produce something very concrete and very pragmatic, and something that is going to be useful to the people around you. In human resources is for all the talent around us.
Mm.
Um, so this is what I've learned. I think that the practice I would have had if I had stayed in Europe would have been very different. I think it would have been maybe less relational. It doesn't mean it would not have been relational, but it would have been less relational. It would have been also less maybe focused on humility, because humility might be seen over there as a a negative trait, or
Mm.
something that is a vulnerability. So this is not, something to be proud of,
Mm.
to say that you don't know, to say that, you don't know anything. Yeah, so I think it made me, hopefully, a better human being. I hope,
Mhm.
I am very grateful for this journey, because I believe that it would have enhanced, me as a human being. And this is just a journey, so it's every day. You go
Yes.
back to the drawing board and you learn from scratch, and you start from scratch again. And this is also something that is very powerful in Asia. This, I remember going to Korea in 2021, helping, the organization, because there was no GM at that time. So I was sent for 6 weeks, during COVID, to help the team. And, all of a sudden, despite all the studies I had made and I had done in Japan, and even if I had been to Korea maybe 50 times, I
Yeah.
have to learn from scratch again. I have to learn
Mm.
from zero again, because my role and my, mandate for 6 weeks is completely different. I'm not in and out. I'm not here just for, like a business trip. I
Mm.
have, an assignment, and I need to be, you know, basically influencing, or I need to be supporting the Korean team in a way that is making sense, that is actually relatable to them. And, I remember that moment, because I was very angry at the beginning. I was so angry at the beginning. I was like, why on earth do I have to start from scratch again? And I share that with my husband, and he was like, what do you mean? I mean, all our lives we are going to start from scratch again. What do you expect from us? And I think it was a moment of, most probably, ego, like, ego that was
Mm.
misplaced, that, oh, if you have visited the country for 50 times, you must know about these things. And
Yeah.
it was a good reminder. It was a very powerful reminder that, this is not the way it works. You start from
Mm.
scratch. You start from very low, and you reread the books about the Korean history. You go back to the museum. You go back 6 or 7 times if you need to learn because all these
Mm.
eras are so complicated in the Korean dynasties. I
True.
got so much lost. So after, one visit of the CEO, the National Korean Museum, I was completely lost. Okay, you go back a second time, and you go back a third time, and I felt like it was a great message I was receiving. It was a message about, like, reinventing yourself, and respecting the environment,
Yeah.
and really making sure you adapt from your own being physically to this environment, to have, the proper connection. You were talking about
Mm.
connections, to enjoy the true connection with these, great Korean colleagues that I had.
I mean, this definitely resonates with me, what you're sharing, Vanessa, because when I had the chance to move from Germany to Hong Kong for my work in 2010, I thought, oh, it's going to be smooth sailing because I am of Chinese origin. I know the foods, I know partially the language. I look like them, so it should be easy to integrate. But boy, was I wrong. It was a reverse, I would say, a reverse cultural shock. I realized that I'm so different from them. I actually realized that I'm much more German than I admitted to be. Because, for almost my entire life, I always wanted to leave Germany. I managed to live in the States for a couple of years for school, but I've always returned back, started working there, but always had this, I think you mentioned it in the beginning as well, this yearning, this unexplained yearning to leave. I think in German there's a word for it called Fernweh, that German has very specific words, right? Sometimes in English we need to say it or explain it in a sentence, but in German, there are actually specific words for such sentiments, such feelings. So yeah, when I moved to Hong Kong, then I realized I was so different from my colleagues, the way I speak, the way I think. What made it especially tough is also because of my appearance. I look Chinese, and then people have this certain expectation of me that I would pick up Cantonese very easily, that and of course, the way I speak, I'm quite assertive, very direct, especially when I first came from Germany and I was working for a Chinese line manager. So there was definitely this cultural clash. And, making me realize that, yes, there's so much that I need to unlearn and relearn. Now, for me, it was, um, like my colleagues expecting me to behave like a typical, I don't want to say typical because that's also stereotypical, but like a female Asian professional, a little bit more quiet, more, I don't want to say submissive, but probably less assertive than I'm normally am. But for you, you look Caucasian. You look like a Westerner. You've worked for 30 years in Asia. So I am a banana, yellow outside, white inside. I'm not sure how you would call yourself. Is it an egg? Yellow
Yeah.
inside and white outside.
Or maybe a durian. I am maybe a durian. I think I love durian, so I would say durian. I mean, I can eat durian like there is no tomorrow. Yeah, actually, this reverse cultural shock you talk about, I experienced every time I was on business trip back to Europe. So it was less affecting me in Asia because people, I mean, basically, I think they embrace me. I mean, I was very lucky. A lot of people embrace me, the way I was. I mean, I didn't really ask themselves questions. They were like, okay, she's European, and European is like this, is like that. I mean, they were helping me and guiding me to
Yeah.
be, more attuned to the culture, and they were very kind to explain me some of the cultural mistakes that I made, because I made many, many mistakes. But the part you're talking about, I experienced when I went back to Europe on business trip, because people are like, "You're not assertive. You are really sucking at conflict management. Because the tension in the air is so high over there." And for me, I was very focused on harmonious relationship and harmonious workplace environment. It doesn't mean that I don't want any debates, but I want to do it with respect, and maybe I take more time to bring the debate, just to make sure people are comfortable, that they are not hurt. So over there, it was the moment you enter the room, it's the tension is in the air, and you need to you need to go for the fight. And I was totally taken aback. I was like, "What do you mean? I mean, I'm super jet lagged, and you want me to go for the fight?" So it was really interesting, and it was difficult, because it's very difficult to explain to people that you are not the person who has left. It's because if you say that this way, if you say it this way, you can really make people feel you take yourself seriously, or you think of yourself as better than them, which is the last thing you want to do in any form of interaction. So that all these 30 years of traveling and going around the world has generated in you a new human being that is a little bit different version compared to the one that left. And there is nothing wrong or nothing right about this new version. It's just a different version. And
we
people
evolve, right?
and
With
we
our
evolve.
experience. Yeah.
And we evolve. But people, it's normal as human beings. They would like to stick to what they have seen living, or what they have seen, in the first place. And they say, what has happened to you? Where did you lose yourself? And some people, they ask me, well, how did you lose yourself in the process? And I was very hurt, because I was like, I don't think I've lost myself. I just feel like, I mean, there are times where I'm lost like anyone else, but, I feel very confident in my path and very clear about my direction. And it's just like the version that I'm bringing to you is different from the version that you knew 10 years ago.
Yes.
And I would like you to embrace me. I would like you to welcome me in this
Yeah.
new identity or this evolved identity. But most of the times, it depends on the individual, but they can react, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
differently.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because what you have experienced as you share, which is so good so good for sharing, for people to learn about what your experience in Hong Kong. I think I experienced every time I was going back for business trip to Europe,
Mm.
and yes, and most of the time, I was a little bit taken aback. I was and once I was back here, I was like, oh, okay, fine. I mean, at the end of the day, this is where I belong.
Yeah.
So I take it with a pinch of salt, and over the years I learned to not to take it too seriously, and to take the feedback that I think is useful. Maybe a VP for Asia needs to assert herself in a certain manner in a meeting and in a global HR meeting, and that is something I need to learn from a competency perspective, because
Mhm.
this is required for me to represent the talent in Asia in the proper way. But maybe there are other things they feel uncomfortable that I don't need to change, because I mean this is the way I am, and at the end of the day, I have my own personality, and this is something that is not required to modify. So this type of reflection, and it was something that happened every time. Usually on the way back, on the way back in the plane, you don't sleep, and you're like, oh my god, am I that bad?
Mm. But what they say, people really resist change.
Mm,
A lot of people resist change. I mean, for those of us who embrace change, it's also because I think in the first instance, change is always very uncomfortable because it's something new. You got to get used to it. Whether it's the environment, whether it's a person. So they have met you 10, 20 years ago, that Vanessa, now completely different. And that creates that resistance in them, right? Because maybe they even project it on themselves like, oh, Vanessa is evolving. She has, learned new things. She, yeah, basically has evolved, but I am still stuck in a way. So maybe that's also a little bit of self projection and then wondering, oh, how come you have changed? So yeah, I mean, it's quite normal that we all change. You've now been 30, almost 2 decades you were in corporate. And now you have this huge change just very recently where you started the HR lab in Singapore. So what motivated you to actually start your own business? Because you could have just said, oh, let me stay on longer in corporate, right? Whether it's in that company or in another company. So what motivated you to step outside of your corporate comfort zone?
I think the thing that motivated me the most is the idea of transmission and the idea of sharing my knowledge. And when I say sharing my knowledge, I say it with a lot of humility. I
Mm.
don't say it because I believe that the knowledge I've acquired in human resources is better or is higher or is more sophisticated. Is because I feel like there is a need for our community to really, really find a space where we can try, we can share, and we can debate, and we can find new ways of doing things. It's a very, very lonely job to be a human resources professional. Extremely lonely. You are the custodian of many, many confidential matters. You
Mm.
have a very important role to play in terms of role modeling. So you cannot be seen as the one who is not respecting the rules, the values, the purpose of the organization. You need to be the first one to be, as much as you can, the person who embodies this. So it takes a lot of reflection, a lot of like sometimes you know basically rewiring, or
Mm.
like changing the approach, because you need to realize on your own that you're not on the right track, and you need to bring yourself back to the right track, course correcting yourself. And I feel like this job is the most fascinating job. I mean, of course, I'm very biased because this is my favorite job in the world. But I feel this is a job that is very lonely, and this is a job where we have only
Mm,
started the journey in terms of putting it into frameworks, putting it into concepts. So I think that, this is really what matters to me today, is to be of service, whether it's in education. I'm very lucky. I'm the associate for SUSS. I'm going to start working at NTU in July, and I'm going to support HR, like young professional in their journey. So this is something that is really like a very, very beautiful gift that life is offering me. But I also want to help my customers and my clients when it comes to the questions they have about how to do a better HR journey,
yeah.
and to share a little bit of what I've observed, and also to bring them some findings from the research from other industries, so that they can actually, get to the best of the best when it comes to what they offer to their talent. So this is something that is very dear to my heart, and I feel like when you are transmitting, it's very hard to transmit only to one organization. I think when you have this platform, whether it's the HR Lab consulting, or whether it's education, or whether it's writing thought leadership articles, it's widen
Yes.
the possibilities of
Yeah.
touching people, and also of sharing, and also the possibilities of learning from them. So this is really the new, a journey of mine. It's very new, but it's a lot of fun, and I'm very grateful to be here today.
I mean, it's exciting. I still remember my transition in 2017. So 14 years, one company, and then all of a sudden you're by yourself as a solopreneur. I think my motivation was also very similar to yours. I was never in HR, but I was always involved in inclusion initiatives within Shell. So being on the graduates network, being the president of the women's network, running, facilitating internal intercultural trainings and workshops for my colleagues. So always really interested in all of that. And then when I became head of operations as a young millennial, I had no idea how to lead my team, who is so diverse in terms of age as well. So I had people like team members who were close to retirement. And then I had young graduates just joined us recently after graduating from university. So I actually took up a coaching degree outside of the organization, and then brought in these coaching perspectives and approaches to the mid-level managers. And then I saw that even though we went through so many reorganizations, they never let the ball drop. Employee engagement was always high. Customer satisfaction was always high. So then I thought, okay, I guess something works here. And maybe it's also my time, getting that external nudge. Maybe it's my time to share that with other organizations. And at that time, I was mid 30s. I never expected to run my own business in my 30s. I thought, oh, maybe, another 20 years in corporate. And then when I have early retirement, let me do something by myself. But sometimes the opportunity just arises and you need to grab it. So kind of grabbed it at that time. And like you said, it's you're able to create a wider ripple effect, not just within the organization, but also across. And I think for me, there was so much appetite to learn from also my clients, different industries, because I was always in oil and gas. And now I get to work with, of course, finance and banking, not always very I would say interesting for a lot of people. But I worked with, of course, luxury retail. So interesting in terms of how they run their business. With tech and so many other industries. So I learned so much. I widened my horizon, and that's also my motivation actually to leave corporate life instead of joining another company. And then now, after almost 10 years, I just do not see myself back in the corporate rat race. So, but again, who knows? Because a lot of not a lot, but I know some of my fellow training companies, trainers, coaches, they go back, and that's also okay, right? We all evolve. Now, for you, starting off your own business, you work a lot also with multinationals where top management are usually the Westerners, and we talk about the bamboo ceiling, right? As a woman, we already know about the glass ceiling. Now, on top of that, here in Asia, we have the bamboo ceiling, which oftentimes we see that we have these amazing talents and high potentials in Asia. But then when it goes up the ranks, you typically find more Western senior management. What is something that you would want to change if you had a chance?
Well, it's great you're asking me the question, Fiona, because this is something that is very dear to my heart, and it has been a priority for me as an HR professional for the last more than 25 years. I think I understood it the moment I started working. And it was very interesting, the debate that was happening at that time internally around the fact that, I remember very clearly in 2008, there was a debate around whether or not, we should actually have a pillar dedicated to the Asian talent, and I fought for that talent for that pillar to start emerging, because I felt like the same way we were doing great things because we were doing fantastic things for female empowerment. I thought that it was equally important to actually, create initiatives and ways of working in order for this great Asian talent to get to the top of the organization. For me, I think that the most critical today, especially at a time where the whole planet is unfortunately, like creating barriers instead of opening up. There is this. I mean, it's everywhere. You feel like people are
Yeah.
getting closer instead of like diverging and really learning about others. The first thing is educating the senior, you know, leaders in the HQ about what leadership in Asia means. Because at the end of the day, if you want to win, I mean, for me, it's very obvious. If you want to win with the customers, you need the best Asian leaders that you can have for each market. I mean, this is something that I was so proud at Sephora. We had so many Asian leaders. We had all the GMs of every single subsidiary. I managed to get the GM in China to be the first mainland Chinese GM ever in the history. And this was a huge achievement for me in 2019. It was a big breakthrough because at that time, Sephora China was 5,000 employees. So, there was a lot of thinking in the HQ around, is it possible? And I knew it was completely possible, but it was very important to convince the people who were the final decision makers to make these appointments. And I think the first thing I want to do is to share with my humble experience the way, the leadership in Asia is happening in a different manner than what is expected in Europe or in the US or in Australia. I think that we do not have this very, we do not have this, assertive leaders at all times. We might have some of them, but I think majority of the leaders are what I call personally the quiet leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very, very, very incredible leaders. And I work now with SMEs, as well, and I can see from the SMEs, which is really the fabric of an economy, that you do have a lot of these SME leaders. They are the quiet leaders. They are people who are, like not bombastic, not flamboyant. They are humble. They are low-key people, but they are doing so well and they are so successful at what they do. And I think that I mean, if we could do something, is to really create more awareness around the fact that the shape of leadership, and it's for everywhere in the world, the shape of leadership is doesn't need to be the copy and paste of where you come from. It doesn't need the leadership mantra or manifesto uh, can be the same in terms of values, but in terms of the way it expresses itself can be very, very different. And silence, for instance, silence is something that in Europe they're very, very scared of. If you have a meeting and there is a silence for more than 3 minutes, people believe the meeting is a disaster. And in Asia, we can have silence sometimes for 2 or 3 minutes because people want to ponder. They want to
Yes.
reflect. They want to take the moment of just like, pausing and thinking very deep about whether this direction is right or wrong, and whether this feels right for them. And why don't we, use this silence? I mean, there is nothing wrong about it. It's actually very, very powerful. It allowed me many times to avoid some of the mistakes that I could have made if I had not had the silence to help me to reflect on my own behavior or my own thinking. So I think it's like creating more tolerance around, the way leadership expresses itself across different countries. And it's not right now a time where tolerance is a very appealing word, but I feel like it's very important that we bring these values back
Yes.
to the tolerance and the respect of each other, and the way you do things, Fiona, and the way I do things, and maybe very different. But at the end of the day, if we have this dialogue, it's because we have so much in common and we want to learn from each other. So let's embrace it and let's find ways around it. So once they understand that in the HQ, whether it's in North America or in Australia or in Europe, that the shape is different and the expression is different, I think there will be many, many more opportunities given to incredible Asian talent, and I want to fight for that. I really want to do everything I can to make this happen. Even as a person in a consulting company, I want to influence that if I can.
I mean, that's wonderful. It's not only that you talk about it, but you actually took actions. And I think that's the most important thing. Oftentimes, in, I would say, the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, a lot of people just profess the message, right? It's about gender equity. It's about, and equity in general. But are you really doing something practical every single day to make that happen? I think that's the most important thing. So from you, what I'm hearing out is your sharing is really about quiet leadership. How can we embrace that? There's, by the way, also a really great book called Quiet.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
You're an introvert, right?
I know I am an extreme extrovert. So on the MBTI, I'm very extroverted. But I think I've also learned, especially during the pandemic, to enjoy the quiet moments and to be more reflective. So I'm probably an introverted extrovert, if you can put it that way. But I gain my energy by being with people. But I've also been told and, received feedback that in meetings, I should take a step back and let others talk first. So for me, it's the other way around. Probably another challenge that I'm facing is also because I look Asian and people have that certain cultural expectation of me, which I do not meet. But what you're saying is not only that, we have to do that, but you're actually doing it. And hopefully now also supporting your clients to ensure that we break that bamboo ceiling through quiet leadership. And it's not saying that Western leadership styles are not great. It's just that we can create that coexistence and to create that awareness and respect, that mutual respect for one another. So Vanessa, I feel like we could speak for many, many more hours. Really, really love your sharing. I really love the fact that you also embrace humility. I think this is, no matter what culture you're from, humility, vulnerability is something that helps us to connect with one another. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for your time to be here on the show. I would definitely make sure that the listeners will tune into your podcast as well. So what's the podcast called again? And I will make sure that I also link it.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I felt like we had a great connection. So I look forward to continuing this relationship with you. And the podcast is called the Career Transition Podcast. It's available on Apple and Spotify, and I'm doing it with Vanessa Iloste, my colleague. Yes.
Fantastic. So make sure you tune in. And also, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Thriving Misfits podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And we will continue to challenge the norms, celebrate the resilience and differences, and we will try to break the bamboo ceiling with one conversation at a time. So thank you very much for tuning in, and bye for now.